Hi, everyone. My name is Jaleel Sobers, and today I'm with Jordan McFarlane from Toronto. He's a basketball coach and basketball trainer and educator in general. Um, a question I like to start off with is, who are you?
Who am I? Well, thanks for having me, first of
Thank you
all.
so much.
Who am I? I'm a father. Um, I'm a mentor. I would say I'm a life coach. And I'm also a student. I'm a student of life. I'm a student at the game that I teach. Um, and I like to say I'm a father in the community, a father and a brother, because I think it's all our jobs as men, especially Black men, to keep feeding and nurturing the communities in which we come from. Um, so, yeah, I just think overall, like, I'm a servant of God and a father to all, father and a brother to all. That sums it up in a nutshell.
Um, are you from Toronto?
Yeah, I'm from Toronto. Um, I grew up, I was born and raised for the earlier part of my life in the Jane and Finch community.
Okay.
Um, as I got older, I moved out to the suburbs of Ajax, and I've spent most of my adulthood out there. Um, but even so, living out there, I spend most of my time, the majority of my time in the Jane and Finch community, just giving back, coaching, providing assistance to kids that need it the most, especially from the poor racialized communities. Um, so I'm really back and forth, but just recently I moved back down to the west end of the city. So I'm kind of closer to the kids in which we help out.
And how long have you been a coach?
Hmm. I've been a coach since '07.
Wow.
Yeah, '07. That's roughly yeah, I think that's roughly 3 years after I graduated from high school. I got into coaching. It was a gentleman by the name of Devon Jones that actually, I guess, gave me a push into coaching. I was a high school basketball player. I'd like to say I was pretty good.
Which high school did you go to?
I went to C.W. Jeffries Collegiate Institute.
Okay.
So that's one of the famous schools
Yeah,
around
they
the
were
Finch
pretty.
area, right? So, coming from there, we had we had a lot of talent coming out of that school, basketball wise, but there wasn't enough resources to kind of nurture the amount of talent that was coming out. So, a lot of guys that I would have called my friends back then in high school, a lot of us didn't end up pursuing anything basketball wise. I think it was a blessing that I ended up coaching, but a lot of guys ended up in jail. Some of them ended up passing away,
Wow.
and some of them just fell on hard times and had to really just go get 9 to 5s, a couple of 9 to 5s to even keep a roof over their head or clothes on their back. So um, I mean, when I met Devon Jones, I was working at Oakdale Community Center. It's a funny story. I was working at Oakdale Community Center in a, I don't know if you remember Raptor Ball. There was a program
Yeah,
called
I remember.
Raptor Ball.
Jerome Williams used to do that a lot, right?
Yeah, he was one of the, I guess the spokesman for it. He was like
Right.
the poster boy for it. But we had a Raptor Ball program running out of Oakdale Community Center in the Jane and Finch community, and I was one of the staff members. So I was just going about my day, doing my thing, helping the kids in the community play some basketball. And Devon Jones just waltzes in, and he was actually looking for young athletes to join his basketball team, and he was currently coaching for the Scarborough Blues at the time. And my little brother happened to be a part of the program that the Raptor Ball program that I was coaching in, and he took my brother under his wing, as well as a couple other athletes that were there. And that year went by, just to fast forward, and he decided that he wanted to start an organization within the Jane and Finch community instead of uh, continuing to coach for Scarborough Blues. He felt that there was a need in that community for a lot of the youth. So he started a program that called YAAACE, which is who I coach for now. YAAACE stands for Youth Association for Academics, Athletics, and Character Education. So what he did, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the dynamic out in the Jane and Finch area.
I don't think most people would be, because most people's perception of Jane and Finch is probably like 2000 or like early 90s Jane and Finch, when it was dangerous. And
Yeah.
I had a lot of friends growing up in Jane and Finch, and they said that the summertime was just dangerous. But in around 2004, when he started YAAACE, I remember when it started, but you can tell the story about that.
Yeah.
About how they got like the top basketball players in the area, and they're killing kids like 95-6 at halftime and stuff.
Well, before I get into the competitive side of it, it all started with Devon Jones coming up with the idea of bridging the gap between. There's literally a street that separates what we call the gangs of Jane and Finch, right? So north of Finch. So there's Jane that runs across Finch. So north of Finch is up top Driftwood. This is what they call it, up top. And that area has historically been known for Crips, the blood. I mean, they wear blue, yes. Crips, right? Yeah. South side, on the other side of Finch, South side Jane, they call it, bottom lane, those are historically the Bloods. So blue and red, just separated by one road. They just cross the street and they're in each other's territory. So Devon Jones came up with the concept to say, listen, we need to find a way to try to control some of this violence, because it's senseless violence, and we are committing violent acts against each other, trying to defend territory that doesn't even belong to us, right? So he just said, you know what, we're going to create a program right in the heart of Jane and Finch. We're going to call it YAAACE, and we're going to get kids from both sides of Jane Street to come together in the gym, put them all on teams to see if we can create some sort of peace in our neighborhood. Because remember, these kids, they're a product of their environment and product of history, right?
Right.
So although there is a lot of violence in the Jane and Finch community, or there has been, there's also a lot of love. A lot of these kids just haven't been exposed to it. So that's what we wanted to create, or that's what Devon Jones wanted to create by creating YAAACE. And you know what? It worked. We had kids from Bottom Lane and up top Driftwood playing on about 30 different teams when we started. There was about 30 different teams going. We came out the gate like gangbusters. We had this really gritty mentality, because a lot of these kids really came from nothing. So anything they got, they really had to work for it. It was all hustle. Yeah. So when we started playing, a lot of the suburban teams, the Bramptons of the world and the Whitbys of the world, they kind of weren't ready for our style of basketball. So when we came out, we caught everybody by surprise, and it was some pretty lopsided games. But that's kind of how YAAACE was created. And
so the red and the blue, is that why you guys wear purple, or is that just a random color?
That's why YAAACE's main color is purple, because we just
it's like uniting everybody.
Yes, we just just unite them, because it's senseless violence, and committing just being violent and hurting and killing each other over a particular color or turf that we don't even own. It's silly. We try to explain that to these kids. So that's kind of how it started.
And how much has Devon Jones changed your life and the life of countless kids?
I call him the godfather of Jane and Finch. I look up to him like an uncle, also like a brother. I think he saved my life, to tell you the truth, because I didn't really have a direction coming out of high school. And I think that's due to the fact that, I don't know, like I was never shown direction. There was never, growing up, I grew up in a single parent home with my three brothers, and my mother did everything she could to keep food on the table and clothes on our back and keep us, a roof over our head. So she didn't really have time to kind of show us, this is what you do. You go from high school to college. And there was never a roadmap given to me, or I think my brothers growing up. It was just, my mother was trying to survive. We were just trying to survive. So coming out of high school, I didn't really have that direction, I really didn't have that direction. So I was just working. I was trying to stay out the streets. I was trying not to, get tied up into some of the things, the fast money that could be made.
Right.
And I think at that time I was at the brink. I was working, but
You weren't
seeing,
surviving.
yeah, I was, it was just I was barely hanging on. So I was really there, starting to contemplate and think about doing some things. And then Devon Jones walked into my life, and he saw something in me. He said, "You have a talent, and you just need to explore it, and everything's gonna work out." So from then on, I just started coaching kids, and I really felt I really discovered a love for just helping youth. And yeah, ever since then, I've been rocking with Devon Jones, following his movement, and he's really made a change in the community. You know what I mean? He's created this program that provides provides wraparound support for a lot of these kids that we see. So for every kid that we hear on the news that passes away due to gun violence or stuff like that, there's probably like 50 other kids that have got sent to post-secondary school that have graduated. We have teachers that have graduated from our program. We have policemen that have graduated from our program.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So the list goes on and on and on. So I think he's done a great job. And right now he's still on his laptop, on the phone, communicating with the school board, talking to the police, like just trying to actively provide expanded opportunities for our youth. So I don't know if any of you guys know Devon Jones, dark-skinned, bald guy. If you see him, give him a big hug, because he's the most selfless human being that I've ever come across. And I thank God every day that I met him.
And YAAACE does, I see it on Instagram and on Facebook, and I saw it in person many times about how much you guys do for young children and older children as well. How much, like you guys, I think in the summertime one year, there was a camp running every day, and the kids really didn't have to pay much or at all. And are there any other programs in the city like that? And if there aren't, how can another program like that start, or is it even possible today?
I think it's possible. I mean, although I think the program that YAAACE provides is awesome, it's unique at this point, but I don't think it has to be that way for much longer, because I think it all starts with just forming relationships, right? If we're doing something that another program isn't, reach out or let's talk. You know what I mean? I think everything nowadays is based on relationships. We don't want to just keep this a Jane and Finch thing. We want to make this a citywide thing, a provincial thing, where we can provide wraparound support and help other programs provide wraparound support for kids, because Jane and Finch is not the only area that has poor racialized communities. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I don't have the blueprint. I can't tell you step by step
Right.
how to create a program, but I think we need to understand the need of our community or the area that we're in or that we're trying to service, and then reach out to people who have experience in that area and pick their brain. And if those people are selfless people, they're going to help out. We're willing to help out any community, whether it's the Malvern community or Regent Park. Let's collab, reach out, and let's work this thing out, because the kids of the future, they're going to be taking care of us soon. They're going to be the next mayors and prime ministers and teachers and lawyers that are going to be running this province or this country. So let's work together and, let's help these kids.
Do you find it difficult being a basketball coach to work alongside other coaches? Because I find a lot of times a lot of other coaches, after you get to a certain age, they like to say that you're trying to poach their players or steal their players, when actually you're probably just trying to help their players, and you just want to see the game and the player develop. So sometimes you can even talk to some players on the court because it might be seen the wrong way. How do you get around that?
It is difficult. It is difficult in this day and age because everyone is trying to push their program forward and say, yeah, come to my program because my program does this compared to the other programs. And I just think that mentality is so counterproductive because we all want the same thing for these kids. So no matter if I'm a major contributor in Johnny's life getting to a Division I program, it takes a village. It's not just me. I know with my son, it's going to take a village. So I should find comfort in knowing that if I can't provide something for him, I should be able to send him to, another program or another guy that will help him and be genuine in his intentions. So that has been a problem. I think that's a mentality that we need to change in our culture. It's not always dog eat dog.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I think a lot of these programs at the grassroots level, I'll tell you what they're fighting over. A lot of these programs at the grassroots level, they're fighting over funding. Who can get the most funding? And a lot of times that funding comes from, if we're talking about AAU and all that stuff, a lot of that funding comes from these shoe companies. The Nikes, the Under Armours, the Adidas, right?
Right.
They're all fighting over it. So they're trying to prove that their program is more worthy than this other program, and that's why they should be exclusively with Nike or exclusively with Adidas or exclusively with Under Armour. Which, I mean, it's good to be ambitious, but we're all trying to help each other. So if there's a way we can collab so that all of us can work with Nike and all of us can work with Under Armour and all of us can work with Adidas, that's a lot more powerful. You know what I mean? There's strength in numbers. So if we just get rid of this dog eat dog world mentality, I think we'll get further along a lot quicker, especially in this day and age, right?
Yeah, because in the States they don't have the same, or they might have the same issue, but not over the funding, because you'll have many different teams in the same city be sponsored by the same shoe company. But for some reason, Toronto Canadian programs think that they're exclusively just that one program sponsored by the shoe company, and I never understood how that is productive for Canada basketball to grow if it's like that.
Yeah, it's weird. You're right. In the States, you'll have the state of New York probably has like 100 sponsored teams. You know what I mean? And they have a lot more kids condensed in that one state than Canada as a whole. But I mean, there's, I don't know. There's many ways to get this thing done, and the fact that we all think that there's only one way. Let's fight each other. It's crazy. It's just crazy to me.
Where do you see Canada basketball, or the state of Canada basketball, and how it develops kids 5 years from now? Do we need more funding to develop kids better, or does Canada basketball give funding to programs like YAAACE and other programs?
As far as I know, no, we haven't received any funding from Canada basketball in terms of developing youth. But I think Canada basketball has come a long way. If we go like 10 years back and, you know, the way their system worked and getting talent on their teams, it was a lot different than it is now. Even in terms of racial equality, it's a lot more, it's a lot more cultural now on the teams compared to what it was, you know, years back. But something that they can do better is provide more resources to grassroots programs in order to prepare the youth, for them to get them, right? Because that's the standard. All of these kids, I know growing up, I would have loved to have played for my country.
Right.
And if the grassroots programs are able to get the resources or even get the curriculum that Canada basketball, if they could provide a curriculum to the grassroots programs so that we can better prepare them to play that style of international basketball, I think our international teams would be a lot stronger. It's really strong now, but I mean, if you look at how many kids are playing basketball today, it's crazy. All of these kids want to play ball, right? So I think even if Canada basketball can go from program to program and just provide a curriculum, this is the basics of what we want to see in our athletes when they get to the cadet level, right? I think that's something that could be done better. They're doing a good job right now, but I think it could be done better. Also providing resources in terms of, you know, maybe even some equipment. It doesn't necessarily have to be money, but equipment,
skipping ropes and stuff.
Skipping ropes, even gym space sometimes. I don't know if they can create some sort of a fund or a grant that Canada basketball, you know, gives out every year to supply even gym space for some of these programs, right? I just think there is more that Canada basketball can do. Even in terms of coaches, let's start getting some of these grassroots coaches involved. Get them working with some of these athletes, give them a taste of it, so that like in a couple of years, when all of these coaches that they're using now move on, you have another set of coaches, young coaches that are ready to you know, jump into the driver's seat, right? Because it's the same coaches can't coach these kids or these athletes forever, right? So even in terms of some sort of a program for young coaches where they can train them up, get them all their certifications, that would be useful. Because a lot of kids are playing basketball nowadays, and, you know, these kids need to be trained in the right way. Sorry about that. That's my point.
Is the quality of coaches in Canada going up or going down? Like, are they becoming better coaches, or because there's so many more coaches, is the quality of how well they can coach subpar now?
It has improved. I will say that the quality of coaching has improved. I do think a lot more people now are trying to coach compared to like 5 years ago. So there are still some coaches that need that experience and that do need to get better. I will say that. But there are far more coaches now that are really starting to understand the game. It's in our face now. The Toronto Raptors are world champs. So we have every kid in the country that wants to play basketball. I even think the sport has probably surpassed hockey. I know a lot of hockey enthusiasts will curse me out about that, but I really think there's more kids playing basketball now than there are hockey. It's a cheaper sport to play. All you need is a pair of sneakers and a basketball, and you're good to go. Hockey, you got to get pads, you got to get a stick, you got to get a helmet. So in that regard, I think a lot of the programs that I've seen developing over the years, they are getting better. I think our province, our country is at a great place, or a good place right now, basketball-wise. Just from seeing the talent that takes the floor every day, and what they're learning and stuff like that, I think we are getting better. There's a ways to go, but we are getting better. I believe so.
And what can parents do to make sure that their kids become better basketball players?
I think the main thing that parents have to understand is that they have to make the sacrifice and the investment now, right? Especially if your child is loves the sport and is passionate about it, and is telling you at an early age that this is something that they probably want to do. We have to be able to make sacrifices. We have to make the investment in our kids now so that things become easier when they're older. And basically what I mean is at the grassroots level, it's not free to play basketball. There's some programs that are much more expensive than others, but very rarely are you going to go and play for a rep program where it's free. So you have to walk into it understanding that, okay, this program's charging $1,000. What am I getting? Why do I have to pay so much? I hear that from parents all the time. Oh, we're traveling to the States. We're traveling to, let's say we're traveling to Orlando for the Super Showcase. Why do I have to pay $1,000? Or we're traveling to Maryland or Chicago. And a lot of parents struggle with the fact that they have to pay so much money in order to get their kids the exposure and the competition that they need to get better. You have to understand, when they get to college or when they get to university, if you're going to enter university as a regular student, you're probably going to have to pay in tuition anywhere from $40,000 or anywhere from $30,000 to like $60,000 a year.
Right.
If you can't pay that out of pocket, you're going to have to get student loans. That's going to rack up debt on your children, and they're going to be paying that debt off for almost the rest of their lives. So if you make the early investment into providing your child with proper training, putting them in a basketball program that best suits them, that fits them, those two things are already going to cost you money. There's no avoiding it. Making sure that their program provides enough exposure and training and stuff like that, that's all going to cost money. So if you're looking at the short term, like, whoa, this is way too expensive, I'm not doing this anymore, you're still going to end up paying close to $40,000 down the line for them to go to school anyway. Or they're just going to decide not to go to school. So I think parents need to understand that. Yes, it's rough. It's a struggle to pay your way through some of this stuff at this present time. But just think down the line when you're sitting back and your kid's getting a four-year degree and you paid $0, right? I think that's the most important things that the parents have to understand.
And what age should kids start taking basketball seriously? When they drop other sports, or should they ever drop other sports and just focus on the one sport?
I think the age that they should start taking basketball seriously is when they fall in love with the game. You know, no one could, you can't instill passion
Right.
in talent. You can't make them fall in love with the game, right? It's when they truly start to express that, yeah, this is something I want to do. Or if you just see it in their actions, they're getting up every morning, they're doing things on their own. When they're walking to school, they're always dribbling a ball. When you start to see those things as a parent, you have to start gauging that and monitoring it and saying, okay, maybe this is something I got to nurture. You know what I mean? But we don't want to be the stereotypical parent that didn't get their opportunity to play ball and they're trying to live vicariously through their child, right? You can't make your kid love the game.
You see that a lot, coaching kids?
Yeah.
Living through their children?
Yeah, you see it. You occasionally you'll see the crazy father on the sideline. If their kid turns over the ball, they're cursing them out, jumping up and down. Like, you see it, and sometimes you just, I see it as a coach sometimes, and I feel sorry for that kid because you're not giving that kid a chance to love what he's doing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a father too, and I'm also a coach. And sometimes as a coach, I'm really on the kids, and sometimes I'll shout. So I don't want to be a hypocrite on here. But you definitely see some fathers or even some mothers nowadays that are just going berserk on the sideline. Like, if this is all we got, come on, turn over the ball, right? The advice I give to those parents, sometimes you got to allow them to make mistakes. And as much as you'd like to let them know the mistake they made all the time, trust me, after that game, they know the mistake they made. They know what they've done well,
Right.
and they know what they didn't do well. So sometimes you just got to leave them alone. You know, they have a bad game. For me, this is what I do with my son. He has a bad game. If he wants to talk about it in the car, we can talk about it. But I'm not going to initiate that conversation in that car ride home if I know that he already knows he had a bad game. I'm not going to let it sit on his head, you know? If he has a great game and he also wants to talk about it, yeah, I'm going to tell them how good they've done. But I'm not going to harp on the negative things that they've done on that car ride home. You're killing the passion in your kid. And eventually you could end up making he or she not love the game anymore, right?
Have you ever took it too far with your own son, you think?
I don't think I've taken it too far with my own son. I think I've taken it far. When I first started coaching, my son wasn't even born yet. I was coaching my little brother. And I do think I took it too far with him.
What's an example of too far? How do you know when you're taking it too far with somebody that you love?
Trying to think of an example. I think you've gone too far when you start to build up animosity within yourself towards the athlete you're coaching, and it gets even more personal when he's your son or your little brother. I started doing things to my little brother. I was a lot harder on my little brother than I was to his teammates. That I was on his teammates, if that makes any sense. I'd snap at him a lot faster than I would one of his teammates. And I think it was a combination of me just trying to make sure he was always on point, and me trying to show everybody else that I wasn't biased towards my little brother. Just because he's my little brother, I'm not going to give him special treatment. I think I took that, ran with it, and I went a little too far. And I started to see, as he started to get older, he didn't really love it as much anymore. I'd have to ask him to do things, and he wasn't really enthusiastic about it anymore. And you know what? I could take some of the blame for that. I think I'm at fault for some of that, although he still has some things that, you know, he did that, you know, warranted some discipline. I do think that I played a role in him not loving the game anymore. So I took that, and I've learned from it, and I tried to be better with my son. And I know I get wild sometimes with him too. But,
How old
sorry?
was your brother when you coached him?
I started coaching my little brother when he was in the 4th grade. And I coached him all the way up until, I believe it was the 7th grade. Yeah.
He was young.
Yeah, he was really young and really talented. Kid had some handles on him and everything. And I think I pushed him a little too far. I think I did.
Does he play basketball now?
No, he doesn't play basketball now. No. That's what I'm saying. I see it now for what it's worth, and some things are, our relationship. I put a strain on our relationship, and to this day we talk now, but for years it was a little awkward between me and him. You know, it was a little awkward because he's seen a lot of his friends. He played on the same team that Justin Jackson played on, and Marcus Adi and Godwin Bohin, Amadou Bamba, Thon Maker. So he's seen a lot of these kids that are his age move on to do bigger and better things in terms of basketball, and he didn't. And I think that it plays on his brain a little bit as to, it makes him think, man, if I had done this better, maybe if my brother wasn't so rough on me, maybe I would have gone further. And, it plays on my head too. So,
Do you remember your first time coaching? What that experience was like? Were you scared or nervous at all?
Very. I was shivering. I was super nervous. It was my first time. I got hired for the Raptor Ball program, and I didn't know anything about coaching. I just knew I could dribble, jump, and shoot. I just knew I was good at that. I was still young, right? So when I got hired, I was required to create a program plan and teach all of these kids from the Jane and Finch neighborhood. And I'm thinking to myself, if I don't know what I'm doing, these kids are going to sense it. And they're going to give me a hard time. So the first time I stepped in the gym, I made sure I had everything on point. I had my paper, folded up on my waist, and I made sure I had everything structured. I ran the program, and it was pretty good. So I think once I did it the first time and I got positive reaction from the kids, I lost the fear, especially in a practice setting. I lost that fear. I'll walk into a practice now, as long as I'm prepared, there's no nervousness. But there still is some nervousness nowadays in terms of games, especially the big games, right?
What's the biggest game you coached in?
The biggest game. There's been a few. The biggest game. The biggest game. We actually lost that game. And I think I learned the most.
It was, but I'm not sure because I don't know what kind of games you coach in. But just off the top of my head, I can think of a few. Is it the one in versus Team Charlotte?
Yes. There's two games, actually. There was one versus Team Charlotte, and there was one versus Team Loaded from Virginia. That was the team that had Dennis Smith Jr. on it and Bam Adebayo.
Right, yeah. That game's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. So anybody who wants to go check it out. I was like a fish out of water in that game because there was let me talk about the Team Charlotte game first. So Team Charlotte was coached by Jeff McInnes. I don't know if everybody.
North Carolina.
Yeah, and he also played with LeBron on that Cleveland Cavaliers team. And he was such a high energy coach. I thought I was young and energetic and high energy. So even though he was older than me, he was up and down the sidelines talking. And, when we walked in the gym, he's like, oh man, here goes this NBA team. Because he had a team. He didn't have high profile guys on his team as much as I did. Because I had Justin Jackson and Thon Maker on my team. And at that point in time, those were two, maybe top 10 guys in the nation for their age group, right? Before they graduated high school.
Thon Maker was probably as big as a high school player at one point in time someone could be. Like he was famous.
Yeah. Like we walked into gyms and we got the red carpet treatment when I'm walking beside Thon. Like it just was what it was. You know what I mean? Like, you walk in the gym, people's gonna be looking at you. I remember a couple of times I had to sign autographs. And in my head, I'm looking like, you want my autograph? I'm like, okay, I'll put my little signature on your shoe or your bag. But it was fun times. That game, Jeff McInnes, and I have to give credit to Jeff McInnes. Really cool guy up to this day, really cool guy. I honestly think he outcoached me that game because on paper, I had a better team. Right? But he just came with so much grit. You could tell he read the scouting report. He scouted us out. He exposed our weaknesses, and it went down to the wire, and we ended up losing. And even though that was a game that we had lost, or I had lost as a coach, I learned so much from that game. so much from that game in terms of scouting out teams and figuring out that there's a different scheme for different team. And I think that's something that a lot of our coaches now at the grassroots level don't really, they don't take advantage of that because they're not exposed to that level of competition every time they play. So for coaches out there, if you're at a tournament for the weekend, a Saturday, Sunday tournament, don't just go to the gym and show up for the 2 games you're going to play on Saturday and the 2 games you're going to play on Sunday. Play your games, and if you have a gap in between your first and second game, go back to the gym and just go watch another game. Watch what the other teams do. Figure out who their best player is. Figure out what type of system their coach runs, because that's going to make your life a lot easier when you're coaching the following game and you play that team. I had to learn that the hard way in not 1, but 2 games.
And the team loaded. Tell us about that experience.
So team loaded, I walked into that game knowing that this was a high stakes game. A lot of people from Vegas, a lot of Division I coaches, just a lot of like even boosters and stuff were there just to see that game. Standing room only. There were two courts in that gym going at the same time. But when our 2 teams were playing, nobody gave a crap about what was going on the other side. Standing room only. I thought I was prepared for that game, although I was super duper nervous. And we played that team pretty good. We were pretty solid against them in the first half. So I came out, we were leading in the first half, went into halftime feeling myself like, okay, just 1 more half of this and we got this in the bag. And this is going to be a statement game because this is Dennis Smith Jr. and Bam Adebayo. I don't know what got into Dennis Smith Jr. over halftime, but he came out in the second half and destroyed us. He was a different person. And after the game, when we ended up losing, there were some things I had to reflect to myself on things that I didn't do correctly. I know our team was a bit banged up because we went from the Under Armour Finals in Atlanta and came straight there with only like maybe a day's rest. Like just the day that we landed, we slept, we got up, we had to play again. So my starting point guard, Godwin Bohan, had a knee issue. He was really banged up. Who else? Thon Maker was dealing with a groin injury at the time. Justin Jackson was having knee problems. The only person that was really healthy in my starting lineup was Marcus Adi, the guy that can jump out the gym. So I don't think I tweaked our schemes enough, and I don't think I used my bench enough. To counteract what that team was coming with. And I think that was a part of inexperience and nerves. I was nervous.
What did you tell your team when Dennis Smith Jr. was going off in the second half during timeout?
That he bleeds just like we bleed. He's human. You know what I mean? He's human. He bleeds like we bleed. And all we need is to make 2 stops in a row, and we can change the flow of this game. So it's not necessarily about offense, because I know once we make a couple of stops and we really show this team that, yeah, you're not scoring for a couple of possessions, we can get rolling, because we did not have a problem with scoring. Like, we've got Thon Maker, and I forgot, Mature Maker was also with us for that game. So we had 2 7-footers, another kid that was 6'10", Justin Jackson 6'8", and then we had the guards to go with it. So my philosophy was just like, let's just lock down. So we switched up a bunch of defensive schemes during the course of the second half, but it just wasn't enough to get it done. We were pretty banged up too. So, yeah.
Have you ever been starstruck walking into a gym and seeing some of the most famous college coaches ever?
Yes. Mm-hmm. the first time I walked in and I saw Rick Pitino, I was like, whoa, he's right there. He's right there. Who else? Rick Pitino. I think he's the only one that kind of had me really like, whoa, you know. But I mean, we've seen all of them. We've seen the Coach K's. We've seen them all. But I think Pitino was the one that had me like, whoa, I could reach out and I could touch this guy.
Yeah.
He's for real.
What makes me starstruck was when I saw Chris Mullin and Patrick Ewing and Clyde Drexler. I think this was in New Orleans, and I think they were coaching at the time. But when former players are college coaches and they're just walking around and these like are Hall of Fame players, but I guess the younger kids don't really know how good they were. Yeah. But I'm like, wow, there's so and so and so and so. And then sometimes my brother just has to tell me to chill out.
you know what you know what's even more what gets me even more happy about all that is these kids providing them that experience. So even for instance, my child, he grew up around all of these guys. So when I'm on the road in Vegas, my son was on my hip as a baby. Orlando, Chicago, Maryland, all of these AAU tournaments, traveling with this star-studded team or these teams that I've been coaching, he was there. And for him to even grow up seeing these high-profile coaches or seeing these NBA legends in the same gym, you know, that's something that you can't replace. He's never going to forget that. Even with some of the
with you in those games?
Sorry?
Was he on the bench with you at versus Team Loaded?
Yeah, he was there. In fact, he was in the gym. There was one point he was in that gym and he was up in the stands. You know that? Remember that song, "Watch Me Whip"?
Yeah.
He was up in the crowd when that song came on, doing the whip and the nene, and everybody was cheering him on. This little kid out in Vegas controlling the crowd, right? So those are the experiences that even not just for him, but for some of the younger kids that we coach now, when we travel with them and they see. I remember one time I was actually coaching against Terry Porter. He was actually coaching a team. TJ Ford at one point was coaching against me, coaching a team. And these kids see it and they're like, whoa. And they see the coach come up to me and say, hey, what's up, coach? Some of these kids think I know these guys personally, right? And it's mind-blowing to them. And the fact that they get to see that, they get to see that there's much more to life than just the area that they live in. They can, you know, they can reach out, they can do much more, right? There's much more to life than just their surroundings, right? And I think we've got to provide those opportunities for these kids a lot more so that they stay hungry and ambitious to get out there and become something.
And what do you want your son to do in life?
I want him to do whatever his heart desires. I mean, as much as I'm a basketball coach and I'd love to see him play basketball, whatever he decides to do, as long as he can provide for himself and provide for a family in the future, I'm happy for him. So basketball is just a vehicle right now to you know, help that journey be a lot easier in terms of getting a free education. I just need him to get there. Please get a free education. Please get a free education so I don't have to pay for it. And then whatever he decides to do with that education, I'll support him 100%.
Have you taught your son yet how to deal with situations that are not in his control, like how to deal with the police and racism at all?
Well, you know what? They get all this information via social media and the internet, right?
Right.
So they're already exposed to it. I can't say that I've had a discussion with him yet about how to deal with it, and that's something that I need to do as a father. I'm just trying to learn more about it myself as well. I haven't necessarily been in a situation where I've been abused by the police in any way, but I do feel like I've been racially profiled before, and I didn't even know what to do in that situation. Something as simple as just being pulled over, just for the sake of being pulled over, being trailed by the police, just for the sake of being trailed for no reason. And like I said, I didn't even really know what to do. So I still have some learning to do. I'm taking in everything. But that is something that I do have to do. My son just turned 13, and he's going to start to explore and go places on his own. So that's something that I do need to do.
Does it scare you at all? Raising a black man in this world?
Yeah, very scary. Very scary. No parent wants to have that feeling like, my child may take the bus somewhere someday and the police may just give him a hard time, or, he may, not even just the police, he might be in the wrong neighborhood and, a case of mistaken identity and somebody tries something with him. It's very scary. And like you just said, I think it's important that as Black men, Black fathers, it's very important that we educate and school our kids on how to be street smart, how to deal with the police if approached, teach them their rights as citizens. Because let's just face it, we get taken advantage of a lot of times because we just don't know our rights.
Right. We give up too much information. We just give them our ID and stuff. We just come
right. You're right, and we also have to teach our kids de-escalation tips. Give them tips on how to de-escalate a situation. We already know how they see us, how they view us. Not all of them. I don't want to jump the gun here. Not all of them, but we already know that there's systemic racism out there, and we don't want to fuel the fire. So we have to teach our kids how to de-escalate situations. We don't want to. You're not going to get into a shootout or a verbal altercation with a police officer, especially as a Black man on your own by yourself. It's not going to work. It's not going to end up in the way you want it to end up. So as Black men, I encourage all Black fathers, talk to your kids, have daily discussions, create relationships with your kids so that they feel comfortable coming to you and telling you about experiences that happen to them, not just with the police, not with just other Black kids, but even situations in their life like sexual encounters and how to deal with bullies at school, how to reach out for help. A lot of our Black youth don't want to put their hand up in the class and say, I don't understand something. They're too cool. There's too much pride.
Yeah.
We've got to get rid of that. You know what I mean? We got to talk to our kids and let them know you're not any less cool, or you're not going to be viewed as someone not as smart just because you're trying to acquire information. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Our sons and daughters have to feel comfortable with coming to their mothers and their fathers with very sensitive situations, because if they're not coming to us, who are they going to with it?
Yeah, you don't want them going to the wrong person or nobody at all, and then they internalize it, and then they don't know how to deal with it, and then they end up doing something harmful to themselves or to somebody else.
Yeah.
Did it scare you to become a father?
Terrified. Terrified. I didn't know what to do. I was asking myself, is there a book on being a father? Is there some sort of a blueprint I gotta follow? I didn't have my father growing up. I didn't find out who my father was until I was probably in grades 7, 8.
Wow.
And yeah, and up to this day, I still don't. I know who my father is. I know where he is. We just don't have that relationship. I don't hold any animosity towards him. I'm grown. It's been too long. I can't hold on to that. But it's just been very hard for me to form a relationship with someone that I haven't known all my life. So I didn't really have a blueprint. No man taught me how to change my first tire. You know what I mean? No one taught me how to tie a tie. So those are things I was like, okay, how am I going to be a father when I didn't have one? I don't even know the first thing to do. The best thing that we can do in trying to be a father, you're not trying to live up to anybody else's standards. You just have to be there. You have to be there and be able to provide. Most of us, and it's sad to say, but most of us don't really plan to have kids, or at the time when you have your kid, you didn't really plan it. It happens. So, when it happens, we kind of just go into this panic mode, like, okay, what am I going to do? And what type of a role model do I want to be? So us Black men, we have to start setting up ourselves from earlier on in life, so that it's not so much of a worry as to what type of an example we are to our kids, right? There's no blueprint on being a father. You just be there, form a relationship, and be able to provide.
When did you start to get used to being a father? Because when I became a father, I just been a father for a year now, so I'm new to it. But I started to get my stride like in month 5, when I started to look at myself as a father. Because when I first found out I was having a child, I always wondered, well, I'm just me. How is someone going to see me as a father? But then after a while, I start to realize that this is a new person who hasn't seen me as anything else. She only sees me as her father. So when did you start seeing yourself as father material?
That's a good question. Never thought of that. I don't know. I mean, I still don't think I'm perfect now. But I think when my son was born, he was premature. He didn't go to full term. He came out 2 months early. He was only 2 pounds 2 ounces. So for the first part of it, I spent a lot of time in the hospital. He was in an incubator, and when he finally came out and I got to spend some time with him and hold him, I got a sense of not really relief, but it gave me a sense that, you know what, no matter what, this is a miracle child, and everything's going to be all right. I didn't know how it was going to be all right. Didn't have a plan, but I said, okay, I'm just going to make sure this child doesn't have to do without anything. By no means was I a rich person, and I'm still not rich, but I don't really think there was a time when I got used to being a father, because I'm learning every day to this point. But there was a point in time where I kind of calmed down, and I wasn't as nervous as I was before. Just when that child comes and it's finally there, and you get to spend time with it, and when it's not in it, when the baby's not in the crib, you get to sleep with the baby, you get up, you change. Once you start getting into that routine, you start to realize, you know what, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do this. So I'm still not, I wouldn't say I'm used to it, because I'm still learning, but I'm definitely not as nervous. I'm not nervous anymore.
Were you excited when did you find out it was going to be a boy, or was it a surprise?
I found out. I couldn't wait. I wanted a boy. Once I figured out my partner at the time was pregnant, I was like, okay, she's pregnant. I need to have a boy. I prayed. I prayed every night that it was a boy. I just didn't know how I would be as a father if I had a little girl.
What do you mean?
Sorry?
What do you mean you don't know what you'd be like?
Because, okay, like when they get older, and they start to become young women, I know how I was as a teenager and what was in my mind. I know how I was. So me thinking of that is like, okay, if I was thinking that way, then all these other young boys are going to be thinking the same way. They're all going to want something from my beautiful daughter. And I couldn't wrap my head around how I would navigate that, how I would treat, or what type of restrictions would I have on my daughter compared to what I would have on my son. Would I let my son go to that party on a Friday night and come in at 12? Would I let my daughter do that? I didn't want to be an unfair person, but I felt if I had a daughter, I would have to be unfair.
Yeah, and you would. And I think I have to be unfair with my daughter. There's just some things that she just can't do. Just normal.
And then on the other hand, there's certain things that my daughter would probably be able to ask me for, and I would do, that I probably would give my son a little bit of tough love on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know.
Have you spoken to your son about women yet?
Not on a serious note. We haven't had a sit down, like seriously talk about it. I'll pick his brain every now and then, though. I think it's important as fathers to listen before we start to dictate and try to tell them what to do. You got to listen, ask them questions, or even if they're comfortable enough to come to you, just listen to some of the things that they're saying, just to figure out where their head is at. And then you can kind of have that discussion when the time is right on, the the hard discussions, the tough ones. But I haven't had that discussion with him yet. No.
Are you worried about anything with women? Because the culture has changed with young women, and there are some things that were commonplace when you were a child and when I was a kid that you can do to a girl and that girls can do that if you do now, you might end up with a criminal record.
True. To tell you the truth, I'm not really worried about, I'm not worried in that sense. I'm not worried about the women. I do know times have changed. And, back in the day when I was in high school, I would have to approach a woman or a girl if I was interested. Nowadays, they're lunging at the boys. Like they're full throttle going for what they want. Like it's a lot different. I'm in and around the schools sometimes, and sometimes you see things, and sometimes these basketball players or athletes will tell us, like, coach, it's different now and stuff like that. But
basketball players son's age?
Even older, some teenagers, 16, 17. My son just turned 13. So I'm talking mainly like high school kids. Sometimes they'll tell us some things that it's just like, it makes me think like, whoa, how would I act if, that's how it was when I was in high school. It was a lot more traditional back in the day. You go, you approach a girl, you ask her for a number, make sure you have your pen and your paper, you write it down, right? Now these guys are asking for their Instagram or their what's the other one? Instagram and Snapchat. They ain't even exchanging numbers anymore. It's crazy. But for my son, I'm not worried about everybody else. I'm just worried about him in the sense that I think I need to, we got to talk to our kids and bringing it back to talking to our kids. We got to make sure they're ready, create a relationship so that they're actually ready for anything. They're savvy when it comes to everything that's going to be thrown their way. So I'm not worried about them. I just have to make sure I prepare him for all of that stuff. And I think he'll be fine.
To ask you about coaching, what's it like to play for you?
I'm a no-nonsense coach. I'm a firm believer in when, especially when I'm trying to tell you or teach you the right things, there's no way around it. There's no shortcuts. In my culture, you're going to do it the way I want it done, or you're not going to do it at all. And that's predicated on the fact that I'm actually teaching something that is, like, I pride myself on the fact that I'm teaching something that is relative to the way the game is played today. I don't want to call myself an old school coach, because I believe I've evolved with the times. You know, the things that were taught 10 years ago, 15 years ago has been tweaked. The game's a lot faster. So if you're not interested in fitting into the system that is working, then you don't have a place on my team. However, I'm open to dialogue with athletes as to things that may work better. But when we're all in that setting and I'm coaching you and all the teammates are there, don't bring that up on that spot, because that's a space where I have to maintain control, to maintain order and an organization on the team. But I'd say I'm a very hard-nosed, no-nonsense coach. I'm defense first. I believe in making sacrifices for the team, the greater good of the team. Very disciplined, very structured. And even though I'm disciplined and structured, like, let's say, for instance, you're on my team, right? In the structure, let's say you string off like 2 threes in a row. Even though we have a certain structure, if I know you just hit 2 threes in a row, I'm going to go back to you. I'm going to feed the fire. I'm going to say, let's go. Sometimes you can stray away from that structure to feed the fire, because it's going to help the team in the long run, right? So whatever is best suited for the team to win that particular game on that particular day, that's what we're going to do.
Could you have played for yourself as a coach?
Sorry?
Could you, as a player, when you were younger, play for you, the coach?
I think so. I would have loved to play for me, because especially teenagers or high schoolers, once they get to high school, if they're not coached from a young age up to that point, they kind of develop bad habits that are hard to get rid of. And if you didn't have a coach, or you don't have a coach at that point that's really focused pays attention to the details, you could just slip through the cracks. It's just like school, right? Some kids just slip through the cracks and are forgotten. I always wanted a coach, and I had a couple of coaches on my high school basketball team that were like that. But if I had a coach like myself beyond that, like even during the summer, I didn't play any summer basketball. I wasn't exposed to any of that. But if I had that year round, someone that paid attention to details, and someone that kept me honest and kept me disciplined, someone to push me and say, listen, you can do it, keep on going, but do it the right way. Things probably would have been a lot different for me moving forward as an athlete. You know, I wish I played for a coach like me, to tell you the truth.
And where do you get your no-nonsense coaching attitude from? Is it just your personality, or is it somebody that you saw coach?
I think it's a little bit of both. I had a coach. I had a coach. We called him Moose back in high school. Mr. Elliott. He was no nonsense. If we played a bad half, even if we were up, but we played poorly and didn't execute well, we'd leave the main gym, go into the small gym, and run suicides. Like, he was no nonsense. And he didn't care he didn't care about the outcome of that same game if we didn't play the second half better. So some of us would be like, Coach, I know we played bad, but if you make us run in the other gym, we're going to be tired. We're going to play worse when we come out. He'd just be like, I don't care. You're going to learn. that there's no shortcuts and you have to do this properly. So even if we lose, so what? There's another game, there's another day, there's another game tomorrow. So lose. So, you know, like that mentality, that really stuck with me. That really stuck with me. Like it's not an instant, you're not going to get instant results with kids. It's reps, reps, and reps. They have to be taught it until they learn it, until they understand that, yeah, this is life. You know, we've got to grind. This is the proper way to do it. And shortcuts are rarely ever going to get it done. So I got that from Moose, Mr. Elliott. And I think just my personality too, like I know what I want. I know when I have to get something done, and I'm adamant about doing it. And that's just me. I don't know. I don't know. I think this question, you probably have to ask somebody else about me, this question, because that's just me.
And with the reps and to develop a kid, how do you make sure that they don't lose focus while doing the same thing over and over again and not taking the shortcuts? Because if you do the same thing over and over again, you start to learn, well, maybe I don't have to put my foot on the line. Maybe I can come up a little bit short every single time and he won't notice. How do you make sure that they don't want to take the shortcut after doing something so many times?
Yeah. Everything has to be done in progressions. So, you know, you teach one thing and you make them repeat it over a period of time. And once you start to see them improve and it's starting to get easy, you build on it. So even in terms of training, a lot of trainers think that if they they just try to put together a bunch of fancy drills in a package and they sell that to a kid or a family, and they think that they're actually developing a kid. I mean, if the kid can't walk and chew gum at the same time, it doesn't matter what type of fancy drill you're giving them, right? You got to make sure they can crawl before they walk. They can walk before they run. You know what I mean? Like, so everything has to be done in progression. You have to understand the needs of that particular athlete and proceed accordingly. So yeah, everything is based on reps, but once you've done a certain number of reps and you've analyzed, and you could say, all right, this kid is done with level 1. Let's go to level 2. You kind of stick with the same drill or the same philosophy, but just add something extra now to it. So now what has become second nature becomes difficult again. That's how you gradually just build. You build, you build, you build. And you do that with every category of the game, whether it's ball handling, it's progressionary. Whether it's shooting, it's progressionary. Whether it's defense, it's just a progressionary process.
What are some traits that players playing for you have to have? Like unquestionable, this player has to do this to play for me.
You have to play defense. There's no way around it. I don't care if you can score 50 points. That's not what impresses me, because a lot of these kids are skilled already. They can put the ball in the net, and it makes no sense you have a team full of 50-point scorers and nobody can play defense. So there's only one ball. I'm sorry. There's only one ball. But what we all can do collectively as a unit is play some hard-nosed defense and frustrate the crap out of the opposing team. That stuff gets me so excited. Like if a kid does like a crossover and drops a kid on the floor, does a step back and shoots a 3, everybody's gonna be like, ooh, that would be exciting, but it wouldn't excite me as much as a team that just straps up that other team 5 possessions in a row. Ooh, that gets me going. That gets me going. Like, okay, we held this team to 20 points, or we held this team to 10 points at the half. That stuff is really important. And I think at the next level, especially when kids start to go youth sports, they start to go Division 1, Division 2. You have to be able to follow a defensive system, a defensive scheme. If you can't do that, you're not going to be on one of those teams. You know what I mean? You're just not going to be on one of those teams. So you have to be able to play defense. You got to have heart. Can't be afraid to dive on the ball. Just dive, sacrifice your body, take charges, do whatever you need to do to help the team win from a hustler standpoint. You also have to be willing to talk. I think this is probably the main thing for me. And I tell all the quiet guys that come to try out for a team that I coach, or if they eventually make the team, in my philosophy, quiet guys finish last, especially in the sport of basketball. You could look at guys like Kawhi Leonard, who to the general public in the media, they would say he's quiet. Go to a Raptors game. If you ever have the privilege of sitting courtside, not a Raptors game, but when he was playing for the Raptors, or go to any game that he's playing at, if you ever have the privilege of sitting courtside, at the end of the game, I want you to tell me that that guy's still quiet. It's only the media that makes it seem like he's awkwardly quiet because he doesn't like to talk to the media. But that man is talking on the court. Right. He's talking, you know? So I do think communication, being willing to communicate early and often, that's probably my most important thing. If you refuse to do it, it's one thing if you come to my team and you don't think you can, but over time, if you refuse to do it, it's just not going to work.
Who are some of the best players that you've coached?
Best players that I've coached. Okay, I could start by saying, well, Thon Maker. And not for the obvious reasons, not because he's 7'1", and not because his wingspan could wrap around your house, not because he jumps out the gym. It's because he highlights everything that I just talked about. He encourages teammates. He talks on defense. He's the engine. If he's on your team, even if he's not scoring, he takes pride in rebounding, blocking shots. He's just constantly talking. He's like a coach on the floor at the 4 or 5 position. And that rarely happens. Usually your most vocal person is your point guard, not him. He's just always talking. And as big as you see him, I remember one game, that team loaded game that we played, he left the game a couple of times and the refs weren't going to let him play because he ended up with a bloody nose and a bloody lip. And when there's blood on your jersey, the refs sometimes, I mean, at their discretion, they'll tell you, no, there's blood on your jersey, you're not allowed to play. You know what I mean? It's because he just sacrificed his body. He was just going at Bam. And they were putting a hurting on each other. So he's just willing to do all of those things. So him, Justin Jackson, he just has some gifts, man. At his size, being able to do some of the things that he was able to do, highly gifted. Who else? Godwin Bowen, super small. He's probably 5'10" with shoes on. But he is the best defender that has ever played for me. He will guard you 90 feet up and down the court. And he's going to let you know that I'm here. Yeah, I'm small, but I'm here. And you're going to have to deal with me the whole game. Who else? The list can go on and on. Like, there's a lot of players. Like Marcus Adi, just with shoes on, he's probably 6 feet tall at max. And he can literally jump out the gym. You know, his father was Olympic silver medalist in the high jump, Milt Adi. So you know, and his auntie was, I believe, Merlene Adi. think she was she did the hurdles for Jamaica.
I think so.
Yeah, so he's coming from a good gene pool. So he was very athletic. Who else is there? There's a lot. I can go. I
And
could
were these
just.
players always, because you coached some of these players from the time they were young, were they always the best players, or did they improve as they got older and grew into their bodies?
Um, so in terms of Justin Jackson was always the tallest kid on the court for the most part growing up. Met him when he was 9 years old, I believe. That's grade 4, I believe. But he was awkwardly tall and kind of moved very slow, lethargic. Um, but as he kept on, like my philosophy as a coach is you're a basketball player. You're not tied into a position. I don't care if you're 8 feet tall and you're 10 years old. Justin was probably at 9 years old, close to, I think he was already 6 feet tall. He was already taller than me at 9 years old. But he was awkward. So my thing was, okay, let's teach him how to be a basketball player. Let's teach him how to dribble. Let's teach him how to run. Let's teach him how to shoot. Let's teach him how to pass. I'm not just going to stick him on the block in the post because he's taller than every other kid in his age group. So everybody, just because of his size, would say back then he probably was the best player. I didn't think so. I didn't think he was the best. I thought he had a long way to go. So he wasn't always the best. He progressively got better. And he became a more attractive prospect because he had guard skills being so big.
Who was better than he was?
Who was better than him?
Yeah.
There was a kid, what's his name? Long ago. I'm thinking back to when he was in 4th grade. What's the kid's name? There was a kid named Jasper that played for Scarborough Blues. Filipino kid, I believe. He was amazing for his age, like amazing. Who else was there at the time? You're making me go way back right now. I'm trying to remember these names. There were a couple of kids, skill-wise, that were better than him back in the day. I can't remember all their names, but there was a kid that we used to call Bulldozer. He used to play for Blessed Sacrament Yellow Jackets. Another Filipino kid, but he was built like a bulldozer. And he just run through everybody and score. He was really good. There's another kid named Josiah Scarborough Blues had a lot of good young players back then. It was them, Blessed Sacrament, and a couple other organizations that had a lot of talent very young. Brampton Warriors also there was a kid named Darnell on Brampton that was really good. So there were a few kids that were better than him, and I think he got better as time went along. Same with Godwin. Godwin was really rough, really tough, gritty, but he had to be polished. He didn't really know the game. He was just kind of running and just hitting people when he was younger. So he had to be polished, and I think he got really good. Who else? I didn't have the pleasure of coaching Thon all the way up. I had him for 1 year. So I can't really comment on him. Marcus Adi was pretty good, but he was really raw. He relied a lot on his athleticism. So to see what he can do today is really impressive. So yeah,
Is any part of you surprised by how good these players turned out to be? Or did you know that they'd be that good?
You know what? I'd be lying I'd be lying if I were to sit here and act like a genie and say, yeah, I knew they would be this good. Like, I knew they'd be pretty good, but I didn't necessarily know if they would all get to the pro level. Especially when we're talking about some of my smaller guards, Marcus, Godwin, Bohan, and some of those smaller guards. Just because of their height, there's always been this this stereotype on if you're not like 6'3", if you're not 6'2", you've got no chance. You know what I'm saying? I've always worked with particularly smaller guards. So I'll say I was a bit worried that they wouldn't get a fair shake because they were smaller guards. So I don't think it was a matter of me thinking that they wouldn't be this good. I just didn't think they would get a fair shake. But they've done well for themselves thus far. So yeah.
And can you make an uncoachable player at the youth level? No, is an uncoachable player at the youth level a great player? Can they be a great player and uncoachable?
A great player. I don't think you could be a great player and uncoachable. I think an uncoachable player can become a great player. That really takes a special person, a special coach, a special mentor to put time into that kid to help them understand that they're not always right. The best way to do that is to show them that, you know what, as a coach, I'm not even always right. But it takes a lot of time. There's who was touted as or stereotyped as an uncoachable player. Kyle Lowry. For years they said he was an uncoachable player. But it takes you to understand. You got to understand that kid, not just as a player, but you got to just understand them as a person, and build a relationship. And over time, you got to put a lot of time. It's a lot of wraparound support with these young athletes. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think you could be uncoachable and a great player at the same time. Because if you can't be coached, you can't play. I mean, this isn't a one-on-one tournament. You need a coach at every level that you play on. But you could turn an uncoachable player into a great player.
What's your approach to coaching a kid with a terrible attitude? Do you try it with them, or after a certain age, do you just cut them loose?
Well, it's all circumstantial, right? I mean, you have to try. Initially you have to try, especially if you see something that's special, and you see that the kid has a passion for what he's doing. You put in the time. You never really want to give up on a kid, but you also have to understand that you have 12 to 13 other kids that you have to take care of. So it does get a little difficult. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't want to say that I've given up on a kid, but there's times when you have to keep pushing. You have to keep moving because you have 12 to 13 other kids that need your attention. So you want to give an athlete as much time as possible, and stick with them, and hopefully they catch on. But you also have to think about the other kids, and if you're doing a substantial amount of damage to them in the process of trying to fix the other kid. So it's very touchy. It's, you know, you never want to be able to say that, oh, I had to give up on that kid, I had to quit. But there's so many factors at play. Is that kid only the only problem, or is it the kid and the parent that's the problem? Because parents play a huge role in the process. When you're trying to steer that kid in the right way and instill certain values, team values in that kid, what is he going home and hearing from his parents? Are they continuing to are they on the same page as you in terms of trying to set that right example, and trying to, you know, buy into the team culture and be coachable? Or are the parents saying, you know, I don't know what that coach is doing, I don't know why he didn't play you, I don't know why he didn't play you, you're the only one that could score at will, nobody can guard you. Like, if there's that back and forth, it's very hard to break a kid out of that mentality. So it also has a lot to do with the parent.
Has
So
players ever told you that their parents talk like that to them at home?
yeah, before. It's happened before. When you really, you know, when you start to build a relationship with a kid, sometimes they'll tell you certain things that'll surprise you. And I've had that before. You know, my dad thinks that I should be playing like 20 minutes a game. And, you know, I had one kid that, it's funny. He was in, I don't want to mention names, but we were in Atlanta, the Under Armour Association tournament, one of their circuits. And I had a kid on my team that was leading my team in scoring, took the most field goal attempts, and led my team in scoring. And his father had an issue with me supposedly not running the system through him. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, are you kidding me? I didn't have the stats in front of me on paper right then and there when he confronted me to say that your kid leads the team in scoring and he gets the most field goal attempts. It was mind-boggling. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. So I just went and got luckily enough, Under Armour, they do a great job with keeping stats. So I drew the stats, and next practice, I gave the paper to the son, and I broke it down to the player. You know, these are the amount of touches you're getting. So whether or not I'm directly running a system through you, you're still reaping the benefits. And I told him, take it home to your father and show it to your father. And if he'd like to talk to me about it, he's more than welcome to give me a call, or next practice he can talk to me about it. I never heard anything from my father again. Right? So, and that wasn't a case, like that kid wasn't a problem. He was a coachable kid. He was a coachable kid. In that case, it was just the parent. It was just the parent in that case.
On a team of 12 kids, how many I don't want to say bad parents, but bad or unknowledgeable sports parents would you have?
You're talking about now or back, or like years back?
Let's compare it back then compared to now.
Back then, you'd probably have a team full of unknowledgeable parents. You probably would have one or two parents that really know their stuff, you know, what circuit is what and which organization does what, and, you know, really know their stuff. Nowadays, I would probably say it's maybe like 75% of a team where the parents are really starting to do their homework now. You know, because...
And do they back off and let you coach a lot more than they used to?
Well, I set ground rules at the beginning. So when I make my team, I have a general meeting with the parents and the manager, and I kind of set the ground rules. I let them know, listen, I'm the coach. These are my philosophies. If you have an issue and you want to discuss anything with me about maybe your son's playing time or him not being used in the correct way or whatever, please don't approach me during a game weekend. Don't do it, right? Give me 24 hours after that tournament is finished. Then you could talk to me and we can have a private conversation. But if you're going to approach me in front of other parents and in front of my team, that I'm supposed to have some sort of control to maintain order on a team. Without order is chaos, right? And I think order feeds discipline, discipline feeds a winning culture, right? If I don't have those things, then we might as well not have that team. So I have that 24-hour rule. 24 hours after the final game of that tournament, you can give me a call or we can talk about anything you want to talk about. But if you approach me during the game, who knows? We may have just lost the game. I might be in my feelings.
Right.
Don't come and talk to me about your one kid when the entire team just lost the game. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really have that many. I don't really have that many outbursts with parents. I think if you lay down the ground rules, they're respected for the most part. Parents are always going to talk. They're always going to talk in the stands. They're going to say good things about you, and they're going to say bad things about you. I can't control it as a coach. As long as there's no outbursts in front of the kids and in front of other parents, I'm pretty cool. You know, you could talk to me about philosophies and all that stuff. If I can use it, I'll use it. If not, thanks for the conversation.
And where do you see yourself in 10 years?
In 10 years. Wow. That's a good question. Honestly, in 10 years, well, before the 10 years, in 10 years, I want to be coaching at the pro level, at the highest level, the NBA. By then, by then I'd be like a veteran coach in 10 years, right? Hopefully. So I want to continue doing the groundwork in the community on the grassroots level until my opportunity presents itself.
And what's the future for YAAACE?
The future for YAAACE, right now we run a lot of camps and teams. And as you know, I would say camps are temporary because it's 2 months out of the year during the summer. So the groundwork that we put in and the progress that we make with these kids in 2 months, it's exceptional. Like last summer, I think it was 20 instructional days. So the way our camp works is we have academics for half the day and athletics for half the day. So in the morning they come in, depending on the age, we flip-flop it. So, but in the morning they come in and they do academics, let's say from like 9 to lunchtime, 12 o'clock. In 20 instructional days, we had about 95% of our camp jump a grade level in both literacy and numeracy. A grade level in just 20 days. So I think if we pay attention to the learning styles of all these kids and how they learn, great work can be done. But then when those 2 months are finished and they go back to school, that progress, for the most part, is lost. They don't have that same support. So I think in the future, in addition to the camps we run, which are, like I said, temporary throughout the year, we want to make sure we're providing year-round wraparound support in the form of an academy. We want to get an academy started where we can alter the way the school day looks, the stereotypical or the traditional school day looks, right? For the most part, the kids are in the classroom for about 85, maybe 90% of the day. Kids with short attention spans. I think if we offer some sort of a carrot, and it's got to be like sports specialized. We specialize in basketball. So if we offer half-day academics, half-day sports-specific training, strength and conditioning, and specific to your sport, along with some skill work, I think, and not even that I think, I know I've seen the results. 20 instructional days, almost all of our kids jumped a grade level in math and English. So it shows that the model works. So if we can do that year round in the form of a school or an academy, I think that's the goal for right now.
It's amazing. And one of the final questions is, what would you tell the 13-year-old version of yourself about what you're doing now? And would the 13-year-old version of yourself be happy with what you're doing now?
I think I would say, do what you have to do now so that you can do what you want to do later. So not everything that we get up and do every day is something that we love to do.
Right.
And that's all of us growing up, going through life. Not everything we want to do, we get up and we love to do. But we have to get it done. And we have to be intentional in the things we do. Don't do things just to get it done. You know, do it with purpose. Do it with excellence in mind. Even if it's not something that you love, you still got to compete. You still got to, you still want to be the best. So, you know, if you got to pick up a part-time job being a garbage man, be the best garbage man you could be. And use that platform to get you to where you want to go. Maybe you need to pick up a part-time job to pay for your schooling. Maybe you need to be a garbage man to do it. Do it the best that you can do it so that it can propel you to another level. So I think, long story short, I would say do what you have to do in order to do what you want to do later. I think that's, if I could give them a quote, that's what I would say.
And would the 13-year-old version of Jordan McFarlane be proud of who he became?
The 13 version of
you.
13-year-old version would be proud of who I became today, right now?
Yeah.
I think in terms of being a community leader, yes. Giving back to community, helping youth, I do think yes. I do think, and there's no regrets here, but I do think if I could do it all over again, I do think I could do more, in a sense. I think I could do more. But I do
more
think,
in terms of sports, or do more in terms of which aspect?
putting myself in a better position to help others, right? Because you know how it goes in life. You got to be able to help yourself to a standard to be able to help others. Now, I'm still helping others, but I wish I could have gotten to a higher level, without going into details, but getting myself to a higher level in order to help more, to do more. And I think the 13-year-old version of myself, I think that I would definitely tell them, just do more, be more. And when you get to a certain level of success, push further so that you can come back and you can help. Because it takes a village, and there's always, if you've had the privilege of someone helping you to get to where you are, you got to be that guiding light when you become an adult and you're established. That's what I'd say.
And just a random question. Would you and your son be friends as children? Like, do you that's right?
I think I was a pretty cool kid. You know what? I think my son is a lot more calm and a lot more timid. I was more of a rambunctious type. Like, I get into a lot more trouble. So in that sense, I don't know if I'd be a bad influence on my son when I was 13, but I do think I was pretty cool. You know what? I think I was a lot more street savvy. I was more street savvy. I can get around the city. I can go where I wanted to go. My son's not there yet. My son spent most of his life growing up in the Durham region. So his dad drives, his mom drives. If he's got to go to basketball practice, someone's driving him. If he's always been chauffeured. Me, on the other hand, you know, I could teach him, you know, how to get from Wilson Station to to Union Station, you know. So I think his calmness would probably rub off on me. And he's a lot more disciplined than I was. I was getting into stuff that I shouldn't have got into, but yeah, I think I was a pretty cool kid. So we'd be friends, but he'd really have to use his judgment on the things he got into if I were to suggest certain things.
I just want to say thank you so much for letting me interview you. And from the first time I saw you coach, I can tell that you're very passionate about the game, and you always had a I don't want to say a scowl, but there was always room for improvement with every team that I saw you coach, and I saw that I emulated it in some ways when I took it on as a coach. To be happy, but to be stern and firm with how you teach kids, and also your community building. I really admire how you and the whole YAAACE program are constantly doing things for the community, and I just wish that there was more things like that out there for kids. And I just find it incredible that how many kids I see the YAAACE program help. It's just inspiring. So just thank you so much for answering all my questions today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was kind of like therapy for me. I need to do this more, this one-on-one stuff. But thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate. I didn't know that, you were kind of, you kind of admired the way, I went about doing my thing from a coaching standpoint. So I really appreciate that. And it's humbling.
Yeah, because the first time I coached against you, I was just the assistant coach for the Canada Elite Grade 8 team, and you were coaching the YAAACE team, and you were just yelling and yelling and yelling. but sometimes when coaches yell, they don't yell anything useful, but you were always yelling instructions, which is something that most coaches should do. Instead of just yelling rebound, box out, you have to yell instructions so that the player gets it. Yeah. And I was just thinking, this guy's like a dick. He's like an asshole. But as I got to coach against you more, I realized that you knew what you were talking about and you were really talented. And I think that 10 years from now, I could see you coaching on the pro level, and I hope you do.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate the warm wishes, and I hope I do get there one day. For now, I just want to keep on inspiring people and helping kids. And you know what? As for the community building thing, I don't want to sit on here and take all the credit, because the mastermind behind the whole YAAACE program, the whole YAAACE infrastructure is Devon Jones. He has incredible ideas. Sometimes they're ideas that most would be like, nah, that's not going to work. Don't even waste your time. He doesn't take no for an answer. He just pushes it. And if it doesn't work, okay, let's move on to another idea. So I've got to give credit to Devon Jones. Also, someone else that works really hard at YAAACE is Marina Nguyen. She's our administrator. And all the ideas that Mr. Jones takes, as big as they are, he shoots them at Miss Marina. And she somehow finds a way to try to control it and make sure it happens in an organized fashion, an organized manner. So I want to give them a shout out. And if anybody, I got to give a shameless plug here. I'm sorry. I got to give a shameless plug.
Definitely.
Anybody wants to check out the program and see our initiatives and some of the programs that we offer, just go to www.yaace.com. And you can see what we've been doing even over COVID. We went virtual. Our summer camp is going to be virtual this year. So you can check out what we're doing for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate you.